Okay, we're recording now. Good. So this is the first or second table talk session, depending on how you look like it. Last time was for testing, so let's just call it the second one. This time, topic is fighting game pressures, what it is, what they are, what they do. You'll find, well, I mean, you already saw that I sprawled apart the question a little bit into a couple sub-questions, so we can talk about those. So, first off, I guess would be easiest if we start with something like what does that mean to you as a concept, and how do you guys apply it in any way you want to answer. Let's start with Ezrael, because Vick's going to have a much more technical understanding of it, so it's better to start with Ezrael. So, fighting game pressure, what is it and how do you use it?
Okay, fighting game pressure. At first, I wondered a little bit. There's more than one pressure, but now thinking of it, or more to say, when you send me the questions, I think there are multiple ways to apply pressure and also multiple ways of pressure. Because the first time I encountered pressure in fighting games was this when I was pretty small and I was playing with my brothers, and there's a trick list and you can do special moves. But of course, you have to practice those, and you might not be too well of them. All right, if your brother just walks over and punches you in the face, there won't be a lot of special moves. That is a kind of pressure because you have to act. People running towards you. It's, well, I guess, a pretty common kind of seeing pressure, because the enemy forces you to react. He tries to take the initiative, and, well, you have to deal with it in a way or another. I think this way of pressure gets smaller if you learn mechanics and the game itself. For example, how is there a block bar or something like that?
Yeah, and though that's like a very basic way of pressuring, that does come up once you play people that either have your number, i.e. they totally are reading you like a book right now, or they're just way better than you, no? Even when you calm down about this general, where am I on the stage, what do I want to do, what does my opponent want to do, when you come face to face with someone where the skill gap is very large and you weren't really aware that this was going to happen, like you're in a tournament situation, or perhaps you're playing ranked and you were like, oh, a Terumi player, they're all the same. Then that can happen too, because suddenly you're like, what am I even supposed to be doing now, right?
Yeah,
Like he's not
and
even
what are all
close
these
to you yet,
attacks?
but yeah, if you don't know who the character, what the character is, it's like a mystery game situation or a new game, then
Mystery game situation sounds funny.
yeah, well, it's different, right? Because it's one of those where it's like, okay, what are my moves? What are his moves? How smart and fast is he going to do? Sort of
Yeah,
a thing, I
sure.
guess.
I guess that's one kind of pressure, and it's pretty basic because at first it affects everyone. Like with a low skill, with a high skill, it can be applied basically at everyone and to everyone. But thinking about the whole pressure thing, I guess there's at least one other way of having or understanding pressure. And it was when we both were learning Skullgirls, or you teaching me Skullgirls, whatever you want to call it. And I found myself doing the same mistake over and over again when you were on low HP and I was so too. And it was attacking with with desperation moves, like, oh my god, he's low HP, I have to use my super, and it was always wrong because you pressured me somehow in it. When you get low HP in Skullgirls, you stop throwing bombs with Peacock. That was hella weird.
Yeah.
And I think in situations like these, I experienced another kind of pressure because I was trying to make you making a mistake or give you, I don't know, this, oh my God, what's going to happen next moment. But when you're calm enough and know an answer to the stuff that's flying at you right now, yeah, you can kind of wait the opponent out and counter with something nice. And I felt at the time like that's also a kind of pressure. Weirdly enough, because I'm the one trying to hurl bullcrap at you at any point.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think, pretty natural. There are even people that have this as a huge problem. People that play absolutely optimally until either A, there's low time, B, they have no health, and or C, this is the most tragic one I find, because that's the one that happens often. They are cornered.
Oh yeah,
Funfen
yeah.
had this problem. Like, he just could not remain calm in the corner for a very, very long time. I don't think he has this issue anymore. Last time I played him, he still did, but not to as much of an extent as before. Because before, you cornered him and he was dead.
Game was basically over.
Yeah, the game was over. Like, it's just like he always takes shortest route out, always reversal super on wake up. It's just like, dude, calm down.
Yes, and this gets punished. So I guess these are the two kinds of pressure I could think of right now. So either you are trying to you're having too much stuff in your face, stop remembering super inputs, or can't really get an answer to what your enemy is doing, or kind of the reverse, like you should just find an answer in a calm way, but your opponent out calms you, which sounds super weird. But I always felt pressured in these ways.
Yeah. Okay. Think might be good now to segue to Vic. If you have comments on what Ezra said, you can do so, or talk about what likely we'll talk about a lot more later in this session, or right now if you start doing that. What like the regular definition of like fighting game pressure tends to be, and what that is like. Whichever you want to comment on. Dozo and such.
So by normal pressure, I guess it depends what you mean. If it's just like mechanical, like basically applying mix-ups, I guess. Not sure, like it depends, like
anything. I didn't want to confine the topic because I do think that ultimately the types of pressure that Ezrael was talking about do connect to the more mechanical types of pressure. So we can talk about both of them. Yeah. Go ahead. Whichever way you like.
Yeah, though right now I don't know really what to say, because yeah, as Ezrael said, most of come from like stress situation and when you like don't react to what you are supposed to, or you know it will happen, or if the opponent is man gaming you on some point. What type of other type of pressure?
Or to talk about briefly with the mind gaming aspect. Sorry if I'm interrupting you. I'll just do that sometimes. Like when we're talking about being mind gamed or getting mixed up and such, I think the way that like mental pressure applies there, I mean, I'm going to say obvious things. Please excuse me. Is like you're forcing your opponent to think about a lot of things, or to at least also have some sort of emotional reaction to what he's doing, like that feeling of pressure itself, right? And that'll make it harder for them to pick the correct choice, like you said. Like and mind games kind of don't only extend into I went 2 times high and now I'm gonna go low, which of course is a kind of trick where you like play with the expectations of the opponent, but also in the I don't think he remembers that I have an overhead right now simply because he's looking for other things. Because that's another way to hit someone. And in pressure strings or block strings, for example, especially in more modern fighting games where you can do like a bunch of cancel chains and such and add your mix-ups into that, that becomes kind of very important, right? Like you have to play around with how much, how have I slowed down the other's thought process, plus what are his expectations about what I'm going to do next. So there's these, at least these 2 things that you can do at the same time to your opponent.
Yeah, and making him forget that you have some option is indeed like, even with the basic like low overhead, yeah, of course, like that's a really short like sample, but that's the same idea, like making him forget that you have an overhead and use it like by surprise, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right now I don't know. I don't have a lot to say. Sorry, I had a lot of things in mind before that, so I was not really ready to go into that thing.
Oh, my bad.
Hey, I did it.
Hello
Hi.
there.
You didn't miss much yet.
Hey.
Okay. I have bad napping schedule.
That's okay. But just so I can adjust your volume, would you tell me your name, 3 main characters, and how you're feeling today?
So my name is André Zaremma. There are 3 main characters: Sol Bad Guy, Ragnar the Blood Edge, and right now I can't think of a third one. And I am tired since my napping schedule's bad.
Okay, good enough. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, then I guess let's see what kind of fighting game pressures exist. So the ones I had on my notes, you guys sort of already put together, or we talked about due to other explanations. One kind of pressure that there are 2 kinds of pressure that we're probably not going to talk about later in the session, so I'll just mention those now because they're rare, or don't have much to do with the game, and because they're sort of outside of it. Like one is like, of course, a performance pressure, right? That's more something you do to yourself. I didn't want to be remiss to mention it, but that's probably not what we'll be talking about overall, because that's usually more a thing like I need to win this tournament, or I need to land this combo, and da-da-da, and then that can add to the mental weight that you're carrying around in a match, which is why like people famously say you don't have to remember what round you're on this set. You're on this round. You just win this round. Everything else, people can tell you afterwards if you lost or didn't. The other one is when you're fighting someone with a reputation or whom you're afraid of. This could also be a character. I'm familiar with that one. Like I'm personally very afraid of what's her name from Nitro Plus Blasters? Saber. So at some point I just get like a black wall in front of me and I just don't know what to do anymore and just crumble. But that can be a thing, and I've heard like tournament goers basically defeat themselves just because they were fighting Justin Wong or Daigo or somebody else whom they really respected and were like, oh no, he knows everything. What am I going to do? Dead. Unnecessarily dead, right? Because yeah, I mean they'd probably have died anyway, but still tournament nerves sort of falls into this category too, like that sort of thing. But yeah, putting that aside, so we've talked a little bit about just being pressured into action from movement, positioning, spacing, that there's like pressure from the timer and other stuff in the game, like being cornered. And we vaguely started going in the direction of there being stuff like playing with your opponent's expectations, like, hey, I went 5 times high, you don't even know that I have a low. Well, that's more glove on fight. That's glove on fight and Tekken logic. Yeah, that the other way around. 5 lows. Here's my overhead. That's usually the more regular fighting game situation. Yeah, or just being like, you know what, this guy is blocking kind of slow. Like, I guess right now he's really not keeping up. I can do whatever I want in the next couple frames. I'll just wait and frame trap him because he's gonna panic jab too late. Stuff like that. Yeah. So before I start going into specific technical examples of what sorts of techniques one can use to apply this more technical aspect of pressure, like what fighting game characters actually have as tools and how they're used by gamers. I guess, Andele, you know the topic. Is there anything you'd like to add before I just pick one of these techniques and ask you guys' experience with that? Because that's how we'll probably continue.
Not really, since from what I heard, you basically mentioned almost everything. Since even if pressure is like a very big term, because you can apply it to so many things, like zoning is pressure, like literally just standing there can be pressure as well, because you're keeping your buttons open and stuff. It's a very broad term, but I think with the words you use, like positioning and stuff, that will usually summarize most kinds of pressure. And right from the top of my head, I can't really think of another one right now.
Okay. No problem. I mean, that's why I took some notes and several questions that I haven't even put up there yet with me. Without adding the second question, I'll just go over like what you guys' experience is with sort of some of these. Andele mentioned zoning, so I guess we'll start from the one edge of the screen and then move the characters closer. Not literally, I guess. Zoning pressure, like Andele, I mean, last time you talked a little bit about your experience with zoning. You don't have that much experience with zoning, but like from your own zoning that you've done or that they've done to you, how would you describe situations where that's happened and what's relevant about that sort of pressure to gameplay?
Yeah, the thing is, the kind of zoning I usually experience, since I mainly play, not mainly, but since Smash Bros. Like the game where I learned most of my general stuff. In Smash Bros. Zoning is again like very different. You have characters that try to zone you out with projectiles to keep like what I call it is a bubble of pressure. But the usual thing is that there's going to be a sword character that's going to outzone your normals because he has a sword. So my experience with that is just that fighting those kind of characters that always trying to make you crumble by deceiving you with range, by trying to do things that look unsafe, but because they're far enough away, since they apply this zoning kind of pressure, it's going to be safe and you're going to overcommit into something and then get punished for it. I have a lot of trouble dealing with that since I always want to go fast. So when someone spaces the aerial and it looks to me like it's going to be punishable, I am usually going to go for the grab that's going to whiff and going to get my face beaten in. That's my experience. It always takes a while for me to really understand what character is like safe. So by now I know a bunch of characters that when they do stuff on my shield, I know not to grab or not to try to punish, but just get out of their bubble of safety. Since usually that's kind of the thing. Zoners build up a little bubble around them, and when you're in that bubble, you're gonna have problems unless you punish them in some way and like get in there before they can build up this safety bubble. Yeah.
I see. That's interesting, because as someone that I'd say does a lot of zoning, I obviously have a different perspective, but before I get to that, like I'll get you guys' opinion on that first. Ezrael, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just muted because, well, there's a lot of noise in my house, of course.
Yep. Then same question to you. I guess I don't have to repeat it.
Please do so anyway.
Yes, you do. Yeah, like zoning. I mean, you haven't zoned a lot, I suppose, but what sorts of pressure happened to you, or did you apply in zoning situations in your experience? And Yeah, well, how did that affect the gameplay situations?
There actually was a game in which I played a zoner and did so terrifyingly well, and it was Under Night in Birth. Even though that may have been more connected to my terrible connection and the way the game works itself.
Well, you did play offline once.
Yes, I do. Zoning always felt a little bit weird to me because I feel pressured myself when I'm trying to zone the enemy out, even though he might not even like walk the halfway to my character or make it halfway to the character before I perfect him. I feel like, oh my god, what's up when he's getting through, and I have to get him somehow off, and I don't really like that. But the pressure there is, I don't know. I always felt more pressured when I was trying to zone, but when I was zoned out somehow.
Mm-hmm. How was it when you were being zoned out?
Well, it felt normal in Skullgirls. Well,
Default state.
exactly. You might not have an answer to it the first times or the first time, but you usually can ask the people or simply look up what the hell is this game. Okay, it got push block, it got teleports. There's always a way around zoning usually. Or does my character have invul frames or other ways to get by? And even if not, hey, let's exercise this stupid super jump to get above all these shots and stuff. But I wouldn't really connect this to multiple forms of pressure.
Sure.
Even in Skullgirls, where you don't have like block immunity. I do get damaged by every bullet you fire, even though if I block it.
Chip adds up.
Yes, it does. But that's it's not like that's a pressure in itself for me, at least. It feels like you're just getting faster to that point where you're, oh, time's running up, or whoa, one of those HP bars is pretty low. So yeah.
Yeah. Vic, any comments on that or thoughts of your own?
I do think like zoning is still like some kind of pressure. Sure, it's not like as immediate as in your face, but yeah, like having less life or not getting to play the game because you are getting zoned out is certainly some type of pressure. I think, at least on yourself. I don't know. Maybe it's like self-induced like pressure. I don't know, but most people will try to rush in on the zoner and generally fail if there's like too much projectile. So I feel it is some type of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about, I guess it's.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I just remembered something.
Yep.
So we played a game where basically everyone's a zoner beside the character that Vic plays. For example, in the Tuhu games, where there's
fucking Suika, yeah.
where there's basically, which is a bullet hell by itself, which is exactly what it's supposed to be. I always felt like that's a different kind of normal game, just like in Under Night in Birth. It doesn't really felt like zoning because, well, everybody can do it, and that's why there's also a special mechanic in itself, like dashing through them. Street Fighter doesn't have this, and that's how you're even able to do a pressure out of it, I guess.
Yeah, the less you have movement and defense options, the more zoning can be a thing if characters are like that in that. Zoning is in Street Fighter 2, for example, is very scary to deal with. Like Ryu zoning with fireballs in a game where your jump isn't that high. And it is fairly slow comparatively speaking, so the gaps Ryu can build where you can just Shoryuken you are like pretty devastating. Also there's like a lot of pushback on block, so you don't get in.
You just gave me Sagat flashbacks, thank you.
Yep.
On the other side of the spectrum, we have like games that also like said before, if the game makes like really hard to actually zone, like Dragon Ball. Since in Dragon Ball, even if you have characters like there are so many characters with so many great projectiles, in any other game there would be you could just zone enemies out with like one move. But since Dragon Ball is such a hyper mobile game, you have literally a button that hurls yourself at the enemy. Zoning is not really a thing. You can't zone anyone in that game because they just gonna be there in your face with assist and super dash and who knows what.
Yeah, and even if we're not talking about a game that has an instant I'm in your face teleport or instant punish for zoning universally, like for example Melty Blood doesn't have any of these, but Melty Blood, your aerial movement options combined with just the speed of the game mean that we're talking about zoning, it's more like, well, I can hit pretty far into the mid of the stage. Like there isn't really zoning in Melty Blood as such. Like there's stuff you can do with Whitelin and stuff, but that's about
so
it.
it's way more like set play and traps than just I spam projectile and wins somehow.
Definitely, yeah. So that was sorry, I was just going to say, so that was an interruption of what Vic was saying, so let's let him continue if he has something else to say.
I just think like I was just going to say that Melty overall, or like games that allow you to go around zoning, will make your zoning more active too. Less just I do fireball until people try to jump in on me and do a DP, which is like the more old school way / Street Fighter-esque type of zoning, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely.
I find it a bit boring. I guess it's everyone has their preference, but it feels a bit too passive on the zoning side, and on the other side it's just hell, depending which game we are talking about.
Indeed. Yeah.
I'm a Honda player. Street Fighter 2. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I guess I'll add to that. So I definitely agree with you. Like zoning provides a kind of pressure. The word I usually hear people use in that situation is frustration. So while I don't think that that's the best word to use, I think it's common in the FGC that people describe zoning as the act of trying to frustrate your opponent into doing something incorrectly or too rashly. Like Ezrael said, that like you get to this point where you just become desperate to reach the other guy, and then you punish them for that. That's a way to look at it, and the build up over like having to go, I mean there's 90 seconds on the timer, and if you have to spend 30 of them to get to someone, then that can definitely mess people up. I mean there's I don't know if it's a famous match, but I like this match of Nakudu against playing Guile in Ultra Street Fighter 4 versus Fudo, I think. I think it was Fudo with Fei Long. And time is ticking down, but Fudo actually still has enough time. It's actually not panic mode time yet, but there's 10 seconds, right? And Fudo can reach him with the next action, but he spent like the rest of the round trying to get in. So what happens now? Guile has this move where he uses, I think it's like forward fierce punch or something, where he just goes forward a lot and swings his fist forward. And Nakudu does this 3 times and he dashes into it 3 times in a row. Dead. Lost the match. Because they spent like the entire set just Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, trying to do something about that. And Fei Long needs to get in, right? Like he doesn't have projectiles or anything like that. Needs to do his Rekkas. Yeah. I guess what I want to say is that like this is something that even happens to like better people. And from interviews, I think I've heard that zoning is like a thing that a lot of people don't like, actually, for the reasons that Vic gave in both directions. A lot of people find it like too passive to do, and they hate playing against it. Like that's one of those things. Yeah. As a zoner myself, I find these, or someone that zones a lot, let's put it that way. I do try to play other characters after all. I find you guys' opinions interesting because I wouldn't describe what I do as like passive or as like, though of course classic Rio zoning is much more passive than zoning in other games. Nor as like building up a defense bubble, though I understand where you guys are coming from, because I mean, like, Andela is mostly trying to get in, no? So it's like a bubble that's keeping him out, so that I guess that's kind of how it appears. Because when I do zoning, I mean, like, in one way, sure, I want to pressure someone by just throwing things at them so he has to deal with them, no? The chip doesn't really matter as much. If it's there, that's okay. Usually it's one of those things that also happens with close range mix-ups. If you have a zoner that can do this, where you try to time it differently every shot, you try to throw them in, if you have these sorts of projectiles, different lanes, so that people expect to jump over the next one and jump face first into a projectile that flies high. That sort of deal. So it's sort of similar to how you mix up close range, with the difference being that instead of like trying to continuously apply like a string of attacks, you're to someone who's blocking, you're trying to apply a string of attacks to their positioning attempts. So that's why I feel like it's very active. I have to think a lot about what my opponent does, and I have to present him with options that he then needs to deal with, and then I need to react to those options. So that sort of thing. And I guess, like, I feel like zoners need to move a lot simply because getting cornered or just standing there and holding your ground and doing that as zoning is, I feel like in most games that's bad. In Street Fighter 2, Ryu just has to do this because, I mean, there aren't any good movement options in that game, so it's not like he can suddenly side switch in some way. Yeah, if that makes sense anyway. Anything else on zoning? Otherwise, I'd say we will move on to something else.
Well, we mainly talked about like projectile zoning, but there is also like like dowsing type of character, which are quite different, as they cannot send like that many fireball, and they do send like generally limbs / hotboxes to the opponent. So I feel that's like an interesting other type of zoning that is a bit more risky in general.
That's a good segue too, so continue.
Yep. I mean, that's more or less that. That's just like control by putting limbs or whips or stuff like that in the face of your opponent. I mean, the biggest example is Dalsim. After that, I have Phonon because I do play Phonon myself.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I have the guy from Breaker's Revenge. You play him.
Oh, he's bad though.
Yeah, but that's the concept, right?
Yeah.
He's bad at it, but
Alcyon
the Third, right?
Great name, by the way.
Yes. Fitting to a pharaoh. Well, I don't think there's a pharaoh called Alcyon, but yeah. It sort of it goes more in the direction of like space control, right? Now we're like with characters that are definitely doing zoning simply because they're keeping the other person out. Like they still have to come towards them to get close enough to even be able to play the spacing game with them, right? But
Yeah.
they aren't as independent as just throwing like a fireball, because yes, like putting out your limb or your whip actually includes putting out your own hurt box, so they're technically whiff punishable. So those characters do work a little different, I feel, and space control is, I think, slightly different indeed. Projectile zoning, you throw stuff around, the opponent basically is forced to go through a labyrinth of them. With these kinds of space control people, that's usually not the case, right? I mean, there are mix-ups, especially with like characters that are more like Phonon, that have like options to go high-low at like various ranges, but most of the time the problem is simply moving in on them at all, because they hit you a lot more often. You can block them a lot more often, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. So you have to jump, sort of jump or dash, but they have a lot of moves that are able to hit those sorts of things. I mean, Dawson has these diagonally upwards kicks, right, that go really far, and even when he jumps, he has like moves that go far down. He has his 2 different dive kicks, with both of which have 3 variations depending on where you want to go. And he has like a slide that he also can do at 3 different speeds, so he can quickly speed into you and hit you in the legs. It's yeah. I mean, Dhalsim's a bit more closer than Phonon, I guess, to being a zoner, but Phonon has stuff too, so yeah.
Overall, this sounds a bit more like the bubble concept I was speaking about.
Yeah.
Since now that you mentioned like that, I guess that isn't really zoning, but yeah, space control. Since they always threaten a certain kind of range, and you really have to work around that and to somehow get in, like, yep. That sounds more fitting to the bubble I described.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, the concepts just overlap, no? Like, because this bubble concept basically is also similar to simply what is the zone of effect that a character has. You know, that zone where it's when you're playing in neutral, where you're like, in this range, during these times, I'm punishable by my opponent's following attacks, right? This is especially important when you're someone who has just a bunch of stubby normals because you're rushed down, and everybody else seems to be able to kick you from 3 times as far away than you can kick them. Because in that case, then everyone starts having like a bubble, right? And so these characters just have way larger ones. No? Just throw it to Under Night in Birth, and suddenly everyone has a huge bubble.
That is true.
Also, it's an interesting concept to think about pressure related to character archetypes. Just as you said, like you have puny little normals as this Russia down guy or girl. Maybe that's why I never liked Cammy as a Street Fighter character, but went with the very strong boxer, because his normals are fast, they deal hell a lot of damage, and they have a good reach. And I didn't really get how that could be in any way worse than Cammy's movement setup until I actually reached an understanding of how fighting games work. But that was my initial impression. Also talking about different spaces, because we kind of got from what is pressure to where is space where one can be pressured about. Another thing we didn't really mention, because it's super niche, platform fighters. If you ever stood above a Falco player at a stage, you really know what having the chills is like. Because suddenly pressure is not only about like the range. Nobody has like a gigantic range in platform fighters like Super Smash Brothers compared to others. There's okay, Ike maybe, but there is no Abigail or Dalsim in there. But it's a huge difference suddenly if you're below someone or above someone.
Indeed, like having like a positional advantage, right?
Exactly. Which is, I don't think, that much the case in more traditional fighting games. Could be talking more about corner pressure there, which we already did, I guess.
Sorta? I mean, like, I guess Andele did already talk about platform fighters actually a little bit.
Yes.
But I tried to make it like the concept to put it onto normal fighting games.
Yeah, I mean, this is fine. Like, Smash is absolutely like part of the discussion here. Like, the only game
Because
that's really
it has
not
a
part.
press start button screen.
Yeah, it's more like the only ones that we're probably not going to be talking about at all are arena fighters, because all of us lack a lot of experience in those. I guess Dark Souls is sort of like that, but yeah. Yeah, I guess that's sort of similar to 3D fighters with ring outs. I have to say, in Soul Calibur 2, people do hilarious things once they think that they're going to get ringed out.
You're right.
It's sort of similar to the corner pressure thing, but more similar to the Falco one, because the Falco one means instantly stock gone, and this means instantly round gone, which might as well be a stock, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, in that sense, people do seem to react more harshly sometimes when it comes to that sort of thing, especially with Lizardman. I felt, because Lizardman had a lot of different options to ring out people. When I did it with Astaroth, it was basically like either it was a total surprise because of that stupid side swing axe that he does that knocks people across the stage, so that can get you flown out, or it's the slow one where people know what's going on, where it's like, okay, put axe on shoulder, push him behind you towards edge, okay, and now basically he has to guess, like, is he going to get grabbed and or hit, or am I going to do low sweep? Because in Soul Calibur 2, if Astaroth does his low sweep to someone that's at the edge, he pushes them out of the ring. So it's one of those things where it's just like, here's your 50-50, guess wrong and you die. Just
Seems super fair, right?
yeah. To be fair, the other option just does a lot of damage, but that sort of gets in the direction of what grapplers want to do. We'll talk about that in a bit too, or right now, whatever happens conversationally, where the grappler is kind of like, I have one big threat. You know I have this threat. Let me hit you with a bunch of things completely unrelated to this threat that only hit people trying to evade my threat. Zangief credit card swipe, that thing he does with his hand, it's a light or something. It does no damage, but it'll hit people jumping out, and at some point they're like, I don't want to be hit a 5th time with this thing, and then you grab them and they're like, fuck. Yeah.
And ultimately, pressure is about getting ringed out, losing the stock, or getting a shit ton of damage dropped on your head.
Yeah. Vic, comments on what's been said so far?
Nothing. I did start that, so I have nothing right now to say to add to anything.
Yeah, no problem. I was just checking back with you. Okay, yeah, I think we've had now zoning, control, and so we're starting to get sort of from that. Ezrael, you mentioned not liking Cammy as much, and I know you play mostly charge characters, which, aside from having charges, have great normals. So usually at the one step closer game, they're very good at controlling space in the cast, because they usually have some normals that move them forward or cover like a lot of horizontal space compared to let's say your Shotos or like other more average characters, and those with stubby ranges like rushdown characters. Hey, even zoners usually with their normals don't have that much range, like if their zoning tools are turned off, so there's like a bigger bubble where they can't escape from you once you're there.
True.
I just meant to say that as some sort of introduction to how to talk about this, but I'm not sure if there's something else to mention.
Well, yeah, I was just waiting for some kind of questions, but yes, you're completely right. Normals are very important to me, but going to the topic, it's important that Usually you're standing as a charge character because it's hard to walk forward and charge. Of course, there are games where there are forward, backward charges, but usually it's the other way around. So you need stuff like a double knee head press or whatever to cover this ground after standing your ground, which is a nice way to get to your opponent or hold your ground, whatever you deem needed right now.
Yeah.
In Street Fighter 4, especially the kick, the standing high kick of Bison is like the bane of any zoning. For my dear brother who loves to play Vega, keeps ranting about how imbalanced it is because it can hit people, it can punish basically high and low approaches, and that's not too nice.
Yeah. Or similar example, since we're specifically talking charges and people with like long mid-range normals. Guile has a command normal, the knee bazooka, which just moves him forward.
Yes.
So it's usually one of those things where it's like, okay, I hit someone in the air, knee bazooka, super. Just yeah, or just moving yourself forward. If you have like a slow sonic boom, you can walk after it. In some situations you can use knee bazooka if you want to keep some charge. But yeah, I guess to round that out, by the way, anyone that's like, no, I thought of something, just interrupt me at any time, right? Okay. One thing that happens where we start getting to like the more traditional explanation of what pressure is, with like people that have good normals that aren't meant to keep people out but are just like there to play the spacing game, is normals that quote unquote jail people, right? Personally, I don't really know how this term is used too much, since I know it mostly from the Mortal Kombat community, and it's like a little bit different there. But the basic concept is simply, if you've hit your opponent with a certain attack, and it has like a specific combination of like recovery frames and or is cancelable into something else, either like it's the first attack in a target combo, or you can cancel it into your next button or special move. For charge characters, it's usually like a special move. But yeah, then the other guy has to sit there and take it, right? So that's like kind of the beginning point where you get to do some pressure, usually at the ranges of most fighting games, i.e. not Mortal Kombat. There's plenty of ranges where you can hit someone and then throw one further thing after them, and they're going to have to block that, but you're not close enough yet to really start a traditional string or anything like that, which usually requires a jump in or dashing in or doing something like that. But it sort of begins there already, because if you get hit at that sort of range, and you're like, oh shit, I guess I have to block the special move that comes now, and the other guy is like, no, I decided to dash in to gain ground and or jump in, then your expectation might be putting you in the situation where, oh shit, I should have done something. Now he's actually in. And yeah, that's sort of the mid-range to up close thing that happens, right? Yeah. Any good experiences with that, or like a footnote on that? It's okay if nobody has one. It's a very specific thing. It's a thing that we all know but don't really think about too much, because it's not while it's like an objective that happens during fights, I don't think this is one where people think about it too much, because it's very natural to understand, I think, once one is into fighting games, even though that it involves like actually like a lot of decision making, like how much movement can the opponent even get to me? How unsafe is it really that after I block this move I'm going to do something? Because usually you're free to do that. There aren't many situations where it's like, aha, oh shit, canceling to super, I shouldn't have pressed it. Why did I even press a button? Because people tend to not do that either, because even as the guy assaulting, that's usually like a situation where people will do something a bit more safer, but a jump in from that situation isn't uncommon. Yeah.
I guess one example I have belonging to that is like again in Smash Bros. Sometimes combos aren't like when you have a combo that's basically not a real combo. It just turns obviously into a mix-up situation. So usually when there's like certain patterns some characters do. It's like after an up air, this character's always gonna go for the next up air. So you just air dodge and get to the ground. But I guess it's a bit of like that pressure in Smash is more like baiting out the air dodge, basically. So you hit someone up in the air, and instead of just going for the obvious up air or something, you wait till they dodge like an idiot and then hit them in the face. That's kind of the same principle, though maybe a bit different from what you mean.
No, I think that's a perfect example. Because basically, like, that's sort of the mind game at that point, right? Like, either, oh, I could escape here if he decides to go forward, or he does this other move and he'll hit me. What do I want to deal with? It's that's what becomes sort of the game there. And yeah, Smash, which has like way better movement options, will have this situation way more often, I feel, than like Street Fighter, where usually you're more on the safer side on that game. Any game where you can dash cancel something, or you're fighting a character that can dash cancel something, you're not safe. Or some Samsho games where you, are a little different on this. They have like this thing called recoil canceling. So in Samurai Showdown games, I don't know which one was the first one to do this, I think 4. When you hit with a weapon attack and you hit a block, your opponent kind of recoils, and he has this animation where it's like, oh, I hit something really hard. And so the question is like, do you go to him and do something to him and or move away if that's what you want to do? Or is he going to cancel his recoil into one of his special moves, which is possible to do? If he cancels into one of his special moves, that'll be usually pretty unsafe for him. But if he calls out you trying to do something, then he'll hit you with it, and damage in Samsho is real. So yeah, it's also kind of similar situation due to a defense mechanic and a kind of special cancel mechanic, right? So yeah. Is there something else? I'd also mention Rekkas, and then we can get to actually standing in your opponent's face. Yeah.
On the top of my head, I can't think of like much more we can really discuss right now. Yeah, there's some
No
other
problem.
kinds of pressure, but we don't really have to discuss every single one, since a lot of them are going to end up being in similar veins, but like different kinds
Yeah.
of the same.
I'll walk us through. Like, I have a bunch of things here, so everything continuing will always be a bit shorter because we end up discussing like a lot of general concepts which apply to specific situations. It's okay. That's expected with this sort of topic, right? Yeah. So we were talking like about charge characters and long normals and mid-range normals and jailing people, and then like having an option to go in. And Rekkas, or even characters based around Rekkas especially, but any Rekka can do this, are really designed for exactly this point in fighting games, right? Like you have a move that usually moves forward and hits once. And if you want to, it can hit twice. You can even cancel that stuff late. And if you want to, you can usually have a third one too. So traditional Rekkas are just that, right? So they're all about frame trapping and moving forward and catching people trying to escape if it's at a range where they're further away. later, more modern games have characters with Rekkas that have like even more evil options, where you can go into a high or a low or a fake fake step forward where you don't do a punch, all sorts of things. But the classic one is just like Mizoguchi from Fighter's History, or like the actual named Rekka from Fei Long. Just 1, 2, 3. Well, Mizoguchi does like 5, but he was there first, so you can just do chesto, 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 chesto. Yeah. At which point also chip becomes a problem with these sorts of characters. So there's like sort of relationship between like Rekka characters and like high chip, and games where guard break is an issue. Yeah, I think in Vanguard Princess you have a character that's sort of like that, right? I don't know if she has Rekkas though. I don't remember. What's the name of the girl with the glasses? Vick?
Katie, I guess? That's the ninja, you mean?
Yeah. Did she have a Rekka, or did she just like before?
She has Rekkas, indeed.
Yeah. Like I haven't played against her a lot, but I felt like guard crush was like an issue. Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. Not with the Rekkas, though. I don't. It's more Yui. If we want to talk about like guard crush, it's more about Yui and her.
That's the Tonfa girl?
Or that. No, that's the one with the big sword, like the Ryu of the game.
Oh yeah, her with the Big Dipper on her sword, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's it. Like Rekkas in this game are not that much for guard break, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just special. She cannot you cannot special console in this game. It's a bit weird due to the assist, so let's not dive on.
Sure.
On that.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Rekkas, I mean, I was just basically finishing the prior point, but Rekkas already shows something that's like becomes important in pressure. Like basically, Rekkas are all about something that you have in anime fighting games, right? Staggering, no? Where you have your magic chain, magic series, or your ABC chain, or whatever it is in the particular game. So since I guess you guys have way more experience with this, since I'm kind of a noob from this point onward, I'll ask you guys about how you do that. And since Ezrael isn't going to know the term just from the name, I guess we'll go with Andele and then Ezrael. Andele, staggering experiences, stuff.
Staggering is like one of the first kind of things you do when you try to pressure someone. Because personally, I'm pretty bad at like traditional can opener pressure, where you pressure someone with high-low mix-ups, left, right, whatever, so long until they break. The kind of pressure game I do is more like this staggering stuff. You hit someone and try to make it so they could do something, but if they do, you are still too fast and you're still gonna hit them. So you just try kind of make them sit and take it for even longer. And the way I usually get my hits is like with something like that, like punishing, not really just opening people up, but punishing things. Since I'm pretty bad at the actual, like in Dragon Ball Fighters they call it dynamo pressure or something, where you like have 20 mix-ups in a row. And staggering is like the baby's first steps. You just slow down your button presses so you can maybe punish people. Obviously that's kind of risky if you have like invincible options in games, but people are not madmans enough to just mash DP on your jab, delay jab.
Usually.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Just to make that slightly more understandable, basically the difference is that some people go into string, and then you have to worry when is it high, when is it low. But as long as you have cancellations, you can be like, okay, if I cancel really fast, it's a real block string. But if I cancel my moves late, then I leave a gap, and that gap can lead my opponent to be like, I think I should punish him here, and then get smacked in the face. Basically a kind of frame trap.
Yes, that is what staggering is all about.
Yeah. So, Ezrael.
Yeah, since I'm that fond of combo play, this isn't really a category I tend to think about. I know the staggers from either, some kind of dizzy stun, which is something different.
Yeah.
Or like guard breaks. So yeah. Not
No
too
problem.
much to say about them, I guess. Interesting thing about guard breaks is that you can usually see them coming. And that adds another way of, pressure on your enemy or on yourself on how to deal with it. Experience from ABK, well, if I choose not to block, to not get guard break, I get hit and then try to block and get guard broken anyway. So blocking with the chin sometimes seems fine.
Yeah. I mean, like, combining that kind of with, one of the simplest staggers is like usually jabs or lights are render cancelable, which just means that they can cancel into themselves, right? Yes. And I guess
famous
that's only
combo of crouching jabs. Who doesn't know it?
Yeah, exactly. So someone runs in on you and is like, kick.
So I know these combos. I'm doing them myself.
but like the spacing on the third one, right? Because it's like you block those two, but what a lot of people then do is like do that, then get up, walk, grab, right? Or get up and walk into range and do something mean to you. And what it can get people a lot is like you just go in and you do your two and do the third one slow. Or even just get up briefly and then do it, but then you're no longer staggering. But it's sort of similar concept, right? You're trying to get your opponent to think, gotta do something here, because otherwise it's not going to be my turn, and or bad stuff will happen, and then bad stuff happens when the third kick hits you low. Yeah, like I only started doing this a little bit. Usually I'm just on the receiving end, and then it's usually Vick. I can't count the number of times actually how often this works, and every time I'm like, I should just wait longer. Vick doesn't go for the grab that often. But yeah, like just the experience of being grabbed a lot feels worse for some reason, and then for some reason my hands in my head are like, no, getting hit apparently and getting comboed is better, even though the damage is higher. Yeah. Psychology works.
To a degree.
So
that's also the question with how to like program your opponent into making stuff or stop making stuff, which can work super well, looking at Nagrim here, or cannot work at fucking all, looking at my dear brother.
Yeah, like there's I think that's like going into a different realm, but yes. It definitely there are the unprogrammables and the people that will always do the correct thing, even though context-wise they're playing more of a bar brawl, a dirty fight, so they shouldn't be doing the quote-unquote right thing in the first place. That was more Nargrim's problem. I feel like he doesn't have that issue that much anymore, or at all, maybe even. He played pretty okay last tournament I saw him in. Yeah, I mean, I'm semi like that. Like I'm like, I got hit out of this option. I never do it again for the entire set.
Yep.
But I only make that choice if I know that I could have done at least two other things in that situation. If it's just a one or the other, then I don't drop the option, because you start doing that, then you start respecting your opponent too much in fighting game terms, and that means you give them more leeway to do things. So sometimes, especially if it doesn't hurt as much, it can be good to just jump into that jab anti-air that has no follow-up a few times, make your opponent think that you're retarded. And that's all right. Vic, not on the part about thinking that your opponent is retarded, but any other thing about the staggering or such that you might want to add? Or
Not really, I feel like most have been said.
yeah. I mean, you can add experience of yourself too, like where that was used or where you saw that something's particularly effective against some opponent.
It all depends on games, because some games like Millionaire Arcana Blood, by example, don't let you redo that for some weird reason. And some are like made for that, like more like Multi-Unist or Guilty Gear, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all like in frame datas and where you can cancel your move into other stuff. Melty and Unist have like reverse beat, so you can like expand this idea over like, I don't know, a lot of ways. With like, because you can go back to jabs and render consoles, or like delay most of your move, delay to overhead, or delay to get like plus frames on a lot of their moves. So that's kind of like the king of staggering / stuff like that.
Yeah, like the creative freedom that you're given in this part of the game in Melty and Unist, and especially in Unist, is pretty crazy. Like being able to go just to any button from anywhere, which also means that you can make pressure a little safer than in most games. Most games move from light to heavy, so usually the later you end, the more time your opponent has to respond. Whereas in these games, as long as you keep your standing jab and your crouching jab, which are two different moves that you can come back to, you can totally end on something that's fairly quick and hard to react to, or yeah, and makes you much safer. So yeah, like those are, it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'll take that as a segue, and I'll start with Vic this time. To like the next step of the way. I mean, like, it's all nice and good to have like Rekkas to stagger and get in, and then once you're in, you're like hitting people in the face. But like at that point, one can say, why would the other guy, if their defense is good, not just block all the way, right? Why do they even open themselves up to punish someone? Because if you're a big turtle, and I still feel like I'm a little turtle-ish, but like I used to be even more early on. You can really just do the calculation of, well, I'll just block everything and let the timer run out. Just where you don't really want to take your turn, but at some point when people have like good pressure and good mix-ups, or are just adept at chipping you, you have to save your life. You have to take your turn. And one way is, of course, that they just did something unsafe. It's your turn to hit them now, and then get frame trapped if that's what the other person is doing. The other thing, though, is that there is pushback in fighting games. In most fighting games, there's at least one fighting game that doesn't have pushback, and in that game, you got the other guy cornered, you win. So pushback just means that if you hit someone, yep. If you hit someone or hit them on block, then it pushes you a bit away. Well, actually, it's a bit more complicated than that. Like your opponent will be pushed away, but if they're cornered, you will be pushed out. In any case, distance is built. Distance which then has to be overcome. So, like something that, as someone that's applying pressure, that you try to do is kind of trying to bridge the gap, and there are like multiple strategies on doing so, and this is where I ask Vic, so what do you think about this? How do you do it, or see people do this? Like the break off and move in sort of step.
Yeah, basically you asked me like how to get out of pressure, right?
That would be the defender's perspective, or how to keep it going once pushback becomes an issue as the person that's pressuring. Both sides, whichever you like.
Let's see. I mean, defender point of view, I guess. You mash DP. That's your only answer, right?
Yeah, I guess. Not really.
Well, seriously, it really depends like what type of game you're playing. Because you always like have like some parries options or perfect guard or something to get plus frames on, well, advantage on your side, I guess. But without that, how to get out? Most pressure point have like, let's say critical pressure or like street fighter pressure, like generally the overhead is like negative or has a lot of time before it. So you just want to know, like, instead of like just blocking, you want to see where is the hole in the pressure and just nick in something. I don't know. Basically. Outside that, I would say it's like really game specific.
But it's always game specific, sure. Yeah, like either you use a defense option or, as you said, overheads are usually not just negative, they might even be slow on startup, right? So a lot of games, if someone goes for an overhead, they're actually already punishable right there if you call it out and jab them.
And that is why instant overheads are not okay.
Why? Yeah, instant overheads are pretty scary because they shift the read and react scale all the way over to read. But that is kind of the deal.
And well, yes, depending like the type of instant overhead, if you talk like about just rising up with a jump, that type of instant overhead are like generally, if they're blocked, you are doomed. Like you'll get punished on landing generally.
Yeah.
Except if the game has like you can dash cancel your jumping normals, well then yeah, you'll still be like in the loop again.
Yeah. So usually while one does see that a lot in higher level matches, it's usually only used to close out a round, because if it hits, like the other guy's dead, you're good. Because even in those situations where instant jump into a normal that will hit on the way up hits people, you'd still be punishable in most games, right? So so you use it to kill, or you don't use it at all, or you have some sort of cancel option like instant overhead into overdrive, like in Blaze Blue.
Yeah, or you're playing Blaze Blue cross tag and you just do it all the time since you have an assist to cover you.
Of course, if you have assists, you just use those. Yes, definitely. Yeah, and like other characters can have other shenanigans, but it usually involves some sort of cancel or having an assist. Yeah, that's indeed like sort of the defender's part of the way. I guess Ezrael, anything to add to that?
Not really, I guess.
Not really, you guess. Or do you need me to say sort of again what we're talking about at this point in time?
Well, I would need the question again since
Yeah.
I was talking to grandma,
Yep.
but the last minute wasn't exactly enlightening.
Yeah, so basically we're talking about the point where pressure stops, for example, due to pushback or something like that, or due to an unsafe move, and from the defender's perspective, when are these and how do you get out, or what are your experiences with that, or as the guy doing the pressure, how do you prevent that from happening, how do you stay back in, that sort of thing.
Are we talking about American resets?
Those are in combo.
I believe Vick mentioned an American reset. Just match DP
nice.
is sort of that way if it's on your wake up. Just wait, no, American reset. Excuse me, I was thinking about American reversals. I guess. Yeah. 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 I mean, you don't have to have a point. Like.
Yeah, I think I have a point. For it was new to me and an interesting experience in Skullgirls as well. The combos are very long. I wasn't used to this, and even though I concentrated on every goddamn second, there was no way to get out. It was a combo. But well, you can reset it. And the really ugly thing then was not against Westwin when he was pressuring me or even comboing me, but when the combo stops and pressure again starts, because suddenly I could have done something. And the way I'm phrasing this shows that usually I wasn't prepared for it. Was in a long string somewhere, anywhere, maybe.
Yeah, Skullgirls is particularly infamous for having resets that so naturally go from the end of the string into the next string that it's very hard to do something against them. Yeah, to the point where like there are several newbies to fighting games that believe that Skullgirls has really easy infinites because all they saw of the game is that they got reset 5 times and died. Which, I mean, there's an infinite prevention system in Skullgirls. You can't just infinite people. So
sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not Hokuto no Ken. That's lame. Next, Andela. But
yeah,
I guess seriously.
I do have some like Skygirls is very weird in that like while you're getting comboed, you have pressure on you. It's like these resets are like not really unique, but in the way that they quote unquote should be used in Skygirls, since they're like one of the most effective ways to get life away from the opponent. It's like so unique since it's basically the main thing of the game, or at least it really feels like it when you watch some matches. It's like the mid combo that could have gone on for forever. Suddenly there's a grab and it's a reset and it goes on. And it's just like, while I'm getting hit, I don't want to be that attentive. It's like I have 2 seconds to realize what the fuck happened, and then I got hit again. By the time I even knew the combo wasn't real anymore. Yeah, Skyward is really weird in that aspect, but like the normal thing about like ending your pressure and starting it again or taking another turn is like that's why staggering is also so important. Since if you do jab jab and then delay a third jab often enough, at some point your opponent doesn't want to try to hit you anymore after 2 jabs. So once you've conditioned them to doing that, you can just run in again, and then you have that space back, and you can try to do it again. That's also a way to reset your pressure or something like that, to make your opponent think that you're just gonna do the safe option and pressure from afar, but then run in, which would be countered if they like try to attack. But usually you try to make them less likely to do that. You try to condition them. That's a good way to reset your pressure.
Yeah, indeed. Like that's a part that I'm still learning. I've never done this, not really anyway. Like I usually use moves to move me in, which can be bad or good. If they're Rekkas, it's usually good, because the Rekka is already built with that in mind, right? Going normal, 1 Rekka, or normal 2 Rekkas, and then just starting again. I've moved myself forward. I don't have to think about like making a very beautiful mixture of, especially like in games with reverse speed, a BB standing A or a CB crouching A, and just making like every string looks so fucking unique and different that the opponent's like, I don't know, I'm gonna keep blocking. With whereas Rekkas themselves always have this, I can turn it more into a number mind game, and just do like, does he know that I'm going to go for 2? Does he know that I'm going to just go for 1 and for 1 again? Same with Akatsuki, basically, right? Because I mean, like, especially since they buffed them, Akatsuki is infamous B Tatsu, right? Where it's just okay, string into 1 Tatsu, you already moved yourself forward. You could do the hoop again, just to trick fool people into getting hit by the string afterwards if they're a little slow on their reaction. Or you, at some point, the B Tatsu comes out and people crouch on the 3rd hit for some reason, or just get hit by it because, well, it's just from the dynamics of the entire situation and the character, it's just a good move to do exactly that. Not exactly the same as a Rekka, but it is like a multi-hit move where you choose how many hits it has and it moves you forward. Like Ukyo from Samurai Showdown basically has this too, like where his Yaido move is basically like, I become a shadow and then do 1, 2, or 3 hits. And surprisingly, people are usually not willing to wait out the 3rd one, so you can get people hit that way. But yeah, exactly, that's kind of the thing. I think the most important part, using like a combination of staggers and conditioning your opponent's block to move in. Like, it can even be to the extent that's like, this is where I always do the overhead. He's going to get up and expect the overhead here, because the overhead's actually not interruptible because it's fast enough, but like he's going to block it here and then just using that to move in. Stuff like that. Yeah. At this point, I would have talked about mix-up high-low, but we totally did that at the very beginning, because, I mean, that's the one that everybody thinks of, right?
Usually.
Yeah. I will add...
as a pressure tool.
Yes, exactly, because you don't want to eat the overhead at some point, especially if it leads into a combo. I mean, like, a lot of older fighting games are kind of fair, where it's like, you ate the overhead, knockdown. Okay, that hurt, but it wasn't that bad. Still, I didn't like it. Whereas, like, in a lot of more modern games, it's like, bam, I opened you up. Time to eat my B&B. Just, yeah, just horrendous. I will say this, though. Andele said that, like, the high-low one is the harder one to do. Like, I'll come from the other end and say staggering or at least like spacing buttons and trying to frame trap people is for me a lot easier to understand than high-low mix-ups. Like, right now I have a character in what's the game called we're playing right now with the doggo that's a cat?
What?
Million Arthur Arcana. Yeah.
Holy hell.
There's a dog that's a cat? What?
Well,
That's a wolf.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she's a wolf, but look at her. Her aesthetics are of a cat girl, even though she's a werewolf, right? She's like a Ezra. What were the people called before France was France? Lombards or something like that.
That's certain people there, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Lombardian folktale werewolf, right? But so proto-French, you could say. But it's yeah, she just acts like a cat girl, in my opinion.
The more you know.
Yeah, the more you know. Knowing is half the battle. In any case, that's my first experience doing like high lows, and hers are really easy, right? Like you have like a lot of options of doing that, whereas like in previous fighting games when I've tried to do this, well, I did start in doing it a little bit in Melty Blood. Like I do that in the to the current understanding that I have about pressure when it comes to playing and not just theoretical. I do string. Sometimes I end with overhead. The good thing about this overhead, if they try to jump out, it'll hit them anyway. Like the girl Satsuki in Melty, right? Like that spinning hit that she does. So basically, like the only bad thing about that is standing block or getting parried, because I mean, if it always comes at the same fucking time, then that's what happens, and usually it just ends my string. But yeah, I have the wrong mentality about using that character. Like I should sweep way more often. Instead, I do the overhead 5 million times, and then it's like every 6 rounds or so I'll sweep. Always hits, but what's the net gain if I do it every 6 rounds? But yeah. What were we talking about? I got
We're talking about that you
mix-ups. High-low.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So a little different, though we started talking about that already, is like attack grab. I'll just briefly summarize the 2 situations we had. If anybody wants to add something, I'll ask about that then. Like, the one thing is the obvious one of like, one of the things that happens when someone staggers like a string or does like a few lows or something, which amounts to a similar thing, and then goes in and instead of doing an attack, grabs you, right? That's the, like a classic grab mix-up is just stopping your attack strings to grab, or usually it happens right on the part where you move in, because usually going from stopping your attack string into a grab takes most characters too long, with the exception of grapplers, where they can special cancel into their command grab, which is usually a tick grab, right? Tick because you hit the block briefly, and then you do your command grab, you cancel it late enough that the other guy actually falls out of block stun and gets grabbed. Because if you do it too early, most characters can't grab blocked opponents. If you've ever played a game where this is possible, you know why that shouldn't be a thing. And yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, so the other thing we had the Zangief situation of like the other guy wants to avoid the high damage grab, so he does everything to not get grabbed, which means you do all of your other moves and never grab and hit the other opponent. And this even works against people that are like more afraid of being grabbed. So while I think I deal with it a bit better now, I'm a person that usually doesn't like getting grabbed also, and so I choose the option to tech a lot when I shouldn't, and like in the example I gave, Vick lows me a lot for that. It's me low, I mean. Yeah. Anybody want to add anything to grabbing in any sort of way? Not, we can go to Oki.
Nothing's pressure related.
Nothing's pressure related. These are options how to apply pressure, I guess. But okay, so that's pretty much everything that has to do from standing further away to standing all the way into your opponent's face, and how that interacts with the different sorts of pressure we were talking about. So Oki and set play. I guess I'll start with Andele. You can talk about that to whichever degree that you want to, and if you have an example from your experience, you can add that as well.
Oki and set play are like the interesting, more traditional stuff, I would say. That seems like the thing that's been around for like most of time, together with staggering. The further we went down the line, the more like crazy shit we got to pressure people in games, like hyper fighters and stuff. We have assists, and in Marvel, where assists can even hit low or high, which makes for really easy unblockables and stuff like that. It's stuff that is very tame, but still like the most essential part, in my opinion. Like treasuring after knockdown is very important, and I am not good at it.
Did you just say that an unblockable on Wake Up is tame?
No, I didn't say. If you look at it in Marvel terms, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, it's like there's like, even if it got crazy as well, then it's more important. That was stupid to say. It's just a very important thing. With pressing after knockdown, that's why some combos sometimes effect sacrifice damage just so you can end in a knockdown and get good pressure going. An example for Dragon Ball, you really rarely do like options that don't end in a knockdown, since it's just so strong to have to limit your opponent's options. Um, like after just like after a normal knockdown, they only can delay wake up back, wake up in place, and that's like only 3 or 4 options you have to cover. It's so good if you want to start treasure or open people up, because they're way more predictable on wake up than they are like while just being in neutral or something, or even while being under pressure. I don't want to say everything now because
No,
other
that's
people
okay.
can say things.
One of you two?
Pressure and Oki.
On Wake Up.
Yes.
No?
Yeah, on Wake Up. That is Oki, right?
Yes. It's the same word even, I think.
Yeah. Besides crossing your opponent up like with a chair, I don't know.
That's legitimate. That's a thing you can
Even
do.
though that completely misses the topic, as the expert in the room here told me it's not a pressure tool. And that's what we're talking about, right?
I guess so. But I think if you do it as an ambiguous cross up on Wake Up, maybe even as a safe jump, no? To explain, like a safe jump is where you time the jump that it'll hit the opponent, so they do have to block, but if they do any move, you'll be already on the ground and can block that one. So that's like common in Street Fighter games, where it's like, okay, I'll mash Wake Up DP, he's jumping, what a moron, ha! And then it's like, why was he on the ground blocking? Could I have just done nothing there and he would have whiffed with his attack? So next time it's like, I'll just wake up, bam, get kicked in the face. What the hell? Yeah. But yeah. I guess Vick, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Oki is kind of my thing. I love Oki. I mean, I do play generally safe-ish Oki.
Rock.
I love character with like slow and big projectile. Generally, those type of projectile are really good to use on Oki to like even more like reduce the option of your opponent. So basically, you force them to block and just take the next string of pressure you will do, or you just bait them if they do mesh DP a lot. But that's another thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, especially good if it's slow, right? Because if it's slow and you can do it early enough, and usually that's a thing in games unless you're Alcyon, then you can move after it. So you might even do some more evil things as they are trying to deal with the fireball.
Exactly. You put a rock on their head, they have to block, and then you mix up it during this time.
Yeah.
I guess in some games you can add like assist and stuff like that to just be like basically smoke screen, like that people don't know what the fuck you're doing in there. And yeah, that's evil. That's a lot like Dragon Ball Fighters and Marvel type of things.
Yeah. Or even like a sort of classical. I mean, I don't know which character did this first, but I guess most people would know it from Street Fighter 4 Dalsim, the super, which is a giant fireball. And it's like, at what point will Dalsim decide to teleport? And he's going to teleport in front or behind you? Where do you block the fireball once it reaches you? That sort of thing. And of course, that works on Oki as well.
I mean, that's where you want to use it. Otherwise, like, you won't have the time to use the fireball generally.
Yeah, generally true. Like 99.99999% of the time. I'd have to think hard about another one, even though the example where I'm thinking of right now was used against someone in the corner. So there must have been time due to some reason that I'm currently not remembering.
Yes, that's like, I mean, I guess you're talking about Dalsim like Street Fighter 4, right?
Yes, to Street Fighter 4, yeah.
Yeah. In the corner, certainly after a throw.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is basically okay.
Yes, yes, it is.
Like, because if he's doing like, I don't know, he's like Link on block and then do the super, I'm pretty sure you can DP or like punch him before he finishes it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think we've gone through all of the tools, and we talked about all of the movement, positioning that goes into it, what sorts of situations are relevant to that and such. So let me have a look at the catalog of questions that I even have left.
Also, you should take a look at the time afterwards.
Oh, yes, I should. I'll do both and probably then just close us out. I think we actually covered everything.
I think so too. We talked about lots of stuff.
The only thing we really didn't cover as much was that I asked about examples, and people were like, that's the general situation. Okay. Something that Ezrael talked about, but that was a bit too far, I guess. I guess there would be stuff that would go further where one can talk about something like what Ezrael said. How do you program your opponent, and how does that have to do with pressure, or like how do certain moods affect like how much you deal with pressure and stuff like that. And but I guess that's going further, and like Ezrael said, we're running out of time. So any closing statements that, or any random thought you guys had that you want to add, then tell me no if you don't.
Not really. We've been pretty through.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we basically covered like most bases.
Okay, cool.
I can't think of anything more.
Yeah, then I hope this was interesting / educational for those that have like less of the technical grip of things, or just haven't thought about like certain miniature situations and how pressure is even provided or built up in the first place. It's always good, I think, to like just talk about it in general, to have like a sort of get ideas about it later down the line. Of course, Vick knows the most about this, and Undated plays the kinds of games where this is also like more important. So me and Ezrael are more the people that are the learning ones, I guess. But yeah. Okay. Any comments? Was this fun? Should we do something like this again?
I think it's nice to talk about those topics in a way where it's more open, like potentially to the public, because of course we have these conversations like in one-on-one situations. I think it's interesting to approach it in another way. Maybe not over 2 hours.
Okay,
like,
so
I don't know,
shorter.
half an hour table talk, boom, get it out.
That's kind of the thing. Like, this is nice, because usually if you talk about the topic like this, you talk about one aspect since it's just happened, and you're just like, God damn it, these fucking stupid rocks, they're so good on Wake Up, and that's the extent of the discussion, and you leave out like a bunch of topics that belong to it. But having something like this is nice, But yeah, 2 hours is a bit long.
I see. So shorter. That can be done easily. Okay. It just requires picking a shorter topic, because I can totally get people to shut up about how good that rock is as a conversation leader in case it becomes a problem for a short session. So that's not really an issue. I can make it shorter, yeah. Okay, so shorter, but would be fun, right? Okay.
So
Is there a specific topic that any of you are thinking of right now which you'd like to talk about in a 30 to 60 minute format?
How about we talk about Blitz Tank and BB Tank?
I can totally talk a long time about the historical usage of machinery and World War II in fighting games, but I don't think that's what you're getting at, because I don't think Blitztank himself is going to put so much. But if you're serious, I can make a topic about that.
That was more like just
A joke.
I still can't believe Blitztank's gonna be a thing in a modern fighting game, because he's really not the modern kind of character.
well, we also have Abigail, so
I guess we have Abigail.
I mean, Abigail is not Blitztank. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not far on the road to Blitzcrank. I said Blitztank from Abigail.
Yeah, it's a giant guy with armor. Definitely.
Yes, who simply plays a little different, but totally can be thrown, hit in the face, and so on.
Yeah. But before we start actually talking about Blitztank, so
Yes.
no other example. Like, I mean, you guys can always send me in a topic, or just tell me whenever you think of one. Otherwise, I'll pick one, and I'll definitely pick a topic that is more concise and short. And even if it's a longer one, then I'll segment it and call it part 1, and then we only talk about a certain amount of it. Like, I think I'm good enough of a conversation leader that I can be like, we won't talk about this now, otherwise we'll sit here too long. Like, had to do that before, so it's alright. Okay, so I assume people have ideas later. So question is, should we do this again? Yes, I hear yes, but shorter, right? This correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and Ezra already said that, so yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Then we can conclude that here. So anyone that wants to flee can. Me and Vic will stick around and...
Actually, I have to go talk to Mesaway right now.
I see. Then only I will stick around and play fighting games with whomever is playing. Then, yeah, I guess Ezra and Vic are leaving, correct?
I will catch something to eat, but then I'll be found on the TeamSpeak server later, I guess.
Yep. Okay, in that case, to you two, definitely bye. And Andela, I think you had a friend over or something?
That turned out differently, so no one's over, but I'm also gonna go catch something to eat, and then I'll see some
Okay.
later on for some games.
Then we'll disperse.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Later.
I just don't.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye.
okay.